Welcome to the Stone Soup Recovery Podcast. Your host, Adam and Sean, will talk about their lives and living in recovery.
Hello, and welcome to Stone Soup Recovery Podcast. My name is Adam.
And I'm Sean.
On tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about fear and anxiety and how that relates to recovery, post-recovery, and, full-blown addiction, what that looks like, and how we are today in recovery. Because there's a big difference between the fears in active addiction and also the fears while we are sober. We still have fears today, but they're different fears. They're different. We're anxious and we have anxiety. That's how we're wired. That's how I'm wired. And the anxiety in the past used to drive me. And the fear used to drive me. I was afraid all the time. And I didn't know that I was diagnosed with PTSD. I had no idea. And so when it came down to it, I drank to self-medicate and to help fight those fears, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, right. Your drinking was a little different than my experience. So I didn't have quite the same fears that you did.
Yeah. Why don't you tell me about that? Tell me about your journey.
I had gastric bypass in 2008. As you know, I had gastric bypass in 2008, and I developed a drinking problem after that, which is very typical of people who have had gastric bypass to have a drinking problem. It dumps the alcohol right into your bloodstream, basically. So you don't even have to work for it.
Yeah.
You just got to drink a little bit, and you're feeling it. So my anxieties were different than yours. You said that you had some problems in your past with housing and
Sure.
money, financial things, and that wasn't the case necessarily for me. I was running a business at the time, and really the only fear I had was that my guests that were staying at my Airbnb next door would know that I was over next door drinking, and
Right.
so for that reason, I chose to kind of hide in the house away from all of that, and so it made it really hard to have a hospitality business with people when you're actively drinking.
Yeah.
So I did have that issue, but I didn't have housing issues or anything like that.
Did you hide it from your family or your friends?
I did. I did hide it from my family to an extent. I mean, social drinking is the norm,
Yes.
for our family and for anybody else that, was in my life at the time. But but to the extent I didn't really know I had a true problem until I knew I had a problem.
I understand.
So until it was out of control, and I got a call from my doctor saying that my health was declining and that my liver was failing, and different things, and that's when I knew I had to make a change.
How much were you drinking at the time?
At that time, at the end, I could easily put away 12 beers, 12 drinks within 3 or 4 hours.
And you don't really have a stomach. It bypasses it, so it goes straight down. So
Yep. Yep.
That's why.
Yep. It hits me 50% faster than it does you. It hits me a lot harder than it would you. If we had the same amount of alcohol, you wouldn't even feel it yet, and I'd already be getting a good buzz on.
That's an alcoholic stream.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. It's like hooking up an IV to your arm and just hooking up, putting a beer bottle at the top of it and saying, "Here you go."
Here you go.
You don't even have to work for it anymore. It's just dumping it right into your system. So yeah, that's a big bad thing about gastric bypass that they don't really tell you about, or they didn't tell me about when I had it, but it's been a while, so maybe they are more onto, that. I don't know.
My experience was different than yours. My experience started out, I didn't drink. I wasn't a drinker. And then I started drinking once every couple months. Then it was more frequent, couple times a month, then more frequent, and pretty soon it was every week and then every day. And then pretty soon it was I'm waiting at the liquor store in the morning for it to open.
Mm-hmm.
And my fears and active addiction, a lot of it was, where am I going to sleep? Where am I going to get my next drink? Because if I don't, I'm going to feel sick. Because at that point I had shakes
Mm-hmm.
and I had to drink. That's what I thought. I had to drink or I'm going to be sick. So I lived in a constant state of fear, and my anxiety was through the roof. I didn't know that I was bipolar. I didn't know that I was diagnosed with PTSD. And so these were unmedicated, and alcohol on top of it caused chaos in my life. It caused a lot of chaos. And I had a lot of fears. I used to be afraid to walk down the street because of the cops. I didn't want the cops to see me because they knew me.
Mm.
And I was afraid I might have a warrant or something. So I was afraid that's a true fear. That was a fear,
Yeah.
But my biggest problem was I didn't know what was a rational fear, because we have those today. Everyone has them. And I didn't know what was an irrational fear. I couldn't tell the difference. And so I was motivated and pushed and driven on fear,
Mm-hmm.
Even towards the end, when I first started getting sober, my biggest fear was I couldn't drink anymore. My biggest fear was,
Mm-hmm.
I can't have this in my life. And my anxiety was through the roof. But I knew in my heart that I had to stay away from it. But there was a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I would drink knowing that I shouldn't drink, feeling guilty for drinking.
Yeah.
But I had to drink. My body, I told myself I had to drink because of my body. I'd get sick if I didn't.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me what you were just talking about, how close that is related to cigarette smoking.
What do you mean?
Well, you were just talking about the alcohol addiction, and so cigarette smoking is basically the same thing. It starts out slow and it builds and it builds and it builds, and then you put that forward in front of everything, whether you have the money for it or not. You find it, and it's the same thing.
It's an addiction.
Yeah, it's the
It
same
sure
thing.
is. I understand that completely.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
And being addicted to it and being afraid that you're going to run out of cigarettes, and if you're going to have a way to go to the store, if you're going to have money for it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was another
the same
thing.
fears.
I was an alcoholic who smoked, so
Mm-hmm.
I had to maintain that. It was a full-time job being an alcoholic, a full-time job. And I tell you what, I had overtime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I put in overtime in that baby, because of my fears. My fears drove me, and it wasn't until I got sober and had some distance from the drink that I was able to kind of look back and just dissect what had happened in my life. And looking back, I see a lot of selfishness in me. I see a lot of fear. And I see a great, great, great amount of anger that was in me.
Yeah, that was what pretty much drove mine too, was anger. I was very angry at the end when I was drinking heavily, and mostly it was because of the loss of my mom.
Yeah.
And I was just pissed at the world.
Well, yeah, wiped right out.
Yep, just me. I didn't care.
I can understand that. When my mom passed away, I was angry too, but I was in prison, and so I didn't have anywhere to put that anger. I had to let go of that and give that to God, because that was eating me alive.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to do that in recovery. I was able to deal with those fears and those anxieties that I have in recovery. When in an active addiction, I would have gone off the rails, and it's probably a good thing I was locked up, because I would have gone off the rails. I would have went and got a fifth. I would have went and got a half gallon, and I'd have been off and running. And so maybe it's a blessing, maybe, that I was locked up.
Mm-hmm.
I've never quite looked at it that way, Um, but I think for myself that I'm a completely selfish person. And that's what the big book talks about too in chapter 5. My biggest problem is selfishness. And I never quite understood that. I never quite understood that until I got sober. Until I could look at things and the selfishness that because I wanted to drink and I did, and I hurt the people around me that I love the most. And that was driven on fear too. I was like you. I hid a lot of my drinking from people, or tried to, thought I did, especially my family.
Mhm.
You know, I didn't want them to know the extent of my.
Well, it's kind of like, you're drinking at a party and then your spouse says, "Are you drunk?" Because he thought that maybe you were like looking at somebody the wrong way or something,
Yeah,
and you're like, "Oh, no, no, not at all. I'm fine. I'm
yeah,
fine. I can drive home." And
yeah.
yeah, it gives you that sense of, I don't even know how to say it,
Empowerment.
empowerment.
Yeah, it gives you, it drops your inhibitions. Sure,
Hmm.
sure it does. You know, but the thing about it is the grief that we both had, it had to go somewhere, and we medicated with drinking.
Hmm.
Both of us did.
Yeah.
And
Well, that was before we even knew each other.
yeah, I know there's a lot of commonalities in your life
Yeah.
that match up with mine, even though there's a lot of differences, which I really dig. But our fear, our fear and anxiety can drive us, and we just have to step back, take a look at it, analyze it, and make the next right decision, do the next right thing. And I think for me, it's working out pretty good.
Hmm. Well, I know that we're going to air a new song from Adam
We
here.
are for
He
real.
wrote this beautiful song. You want to tell us about it, Adam?
It's called "Waiting on You," and it's a song about waiting on recovery, and because that's what I did. Yeah, for me, like I said, I used to drink and feel guilty for drinking, and just wanted to be sober, but I didn't know how. And so I wrote this song called "Waiting for You," and it's about waiting on recovery. I finally have recovery. I'm in recovery, and it's a beautiful thing.
Hmm. The song is beautiful too. Did you write that when you were actively drinking?
Yes,
Mm.
I did.
Wow.
I was actively drinking when I wrote that because I knew I needed to be sober.
Hmm.
I knew there was a better way. I just didn't know how to find it. It wasn't until I met Pastor Steve and Zach Williams that my life changed.
Hmm.
From that point, my life has been completely different. And I don't know, when I got baptized, that changed everything. I had a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience, and I believe that God, I believe God touched me,
Hmm.
and I was able to let go of a lot of fear, a lot of the selfishness that I had. I was able to see it for what it is, and a lot of the anger was let go too. I dropped it all. I got so tired of carrying the baggage, so tired of being a slave to the fear. I dropped it all and I left it there at that church. And ever since then, my spirit and my life has been different, and it's been a blessing. And I've never experienced anything like it before.
Hmm.
So that's kind of where the song comes from. It's called "Waiting for You."
Awesome.
So, well, with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. And hope you guys enjoy listening to us. My name is Adam.
And I'm Sean.
This is Stone Soup Recovery Podcast. Bye.
Bye.
And I've been thinking about some old friends of mine. I swear I haven't seen them now in a long, long time. Me and Mr. Beam, yeah, we go back a long, long way. I was thinking about Mr. Roos, yeah, just the other day. And I've been waiting I've been waiting on you. Anything, baby, yeah, to get me through. I've been waiting I've been waiting on you. She closes her eyes, knowing she'll wake up alone. She knows in the morning that I still won't be home. White lightning, a flash in a little jail time. That's what happens when I talk to old friends of mine. And I've been waiting I've been waiting on you. Anything, baby, yeah, to get me through. 'Cause I've been waiting I've been waiting on